The following program is a sports handicapping show. That's right, we will be discussing sports betting and all kinds of other gambling stuff, including game predictions. As you know, not every bet will win, but we do our best. Feel free to use this information at your own risk, and remember, wager wisely, folks.
Broadcasting from the Vegas Video Network studios, live from the Las Vegas Strip, Covers.com presents Vegas SportsDay. And now from the sports betting capital of the world, here are your hosts, Teddy and the Professor.
It's Monday in Sin City, and you are watching Vegas SportsDay, the pulse of the sports betting world. I'm your host, Teddy Covers, joined, as always, by my esteemed colleague, the Professor, Dave Malinsky.
Coming up today, we've got invitations going out to a garden party. We'll tell you what to bring. We'll talk about why one team's record as a traveler in the NBA might change a little bit tonight on Thunder Road. Bruce is going to be live at the Apollo Friday night, so you're going to have to deal with one of these probably every show this week. And when we get to money time, one of these cases where you might want to watch a game in the first half to decide the smart way to play the second.
So, Dave, we've got Springsteen references, the boss, whatever you want to go with it. Yeah, all week long? Week. So we can prepare for that, or we can prepare our audience for that.
No hiding on the back streets to avoid them.
Keep them coming, please.
They're easy. There have been so many albums. In fact, by Friday's show, you might be ready to get out the wrecking ball on us. It's going to be a tough week.
I'm already ready to get out the wrecking ball, and we're 2 minutes into the show. Dave, first take for a Monday. What'd you see this weekend that you want to share with our audience?
One of the most fun moments of the entire college basketball season. And yes, it also happened to be good for our pockets, but it shows you what senior day is all about and why we talk about it the way that we do. We bet New Mexico against Boise State Saturday. Not a terribly inspired bet. They actually trailed outright in the second half. Finally did take control of the game, and they come down for their final possession. So if you look at the play-by-play, you'll note that Drew Gordon knocked down a three-pointer. They won by 15. Why was that so unique? Never taken a three-pointer in his college career. Senior, final home game, doing exactly what a coach is supposed to do for his players. Steve Alford sets the play, and you could tell the way they ran it, they had practiced that play for a few days. Here's what you're going to get on your last possession. Now, we did a post-mortem on Lane Kiffin back in November, at the end of the Southern Cal season, said, why was Matt Barkley on the field for this last possession? And we find out later, no, because there was a walk-on, his own cousin, and Kiffin designed a play to throw the ball out to the walk-on, get him in the record book for posterity. We like it when we see coaches do these things because the players like it. It means they get it. They understand what's going on. They're designing something to take advantage of the emotion of a given situation. When you see little things like that, that tells you that this is a team and a coach that probably get along pretty well in a lot of different ways. You can learn a lot from these little moments. That was a lot of fun, and we won money off of it.
Yeah.
Have you got a money winner?
Well, that's the key, is winning money off. And I got a money loser, but it's kind of a similar concept because, I don't know what you guys did yesterday. I did what I do on many Sundays, which is you're clicking around, watching games, and a lot of fantastic finishes. What do we see? First, how about William Buford's jumper to beat the Buckeyes, beat Michigan State in East Lansing, March Madness right there. In the NBA, you have Corey Maggetti's wild three with a couple seconds left, covering the number, despite Darren Williams' 57 points for New Jersey. Just all these wild finishes with guys draining big shots that create straight-up winners, big shots that create point spread winners, and frankly, just a harbinger of things to come. This is conference tournament week. It is arguably my favorite week of the entire year. It's a busy week. By Friday, we're both going to have bags under our eyes, Dave, but the bottom line is this week's going to be a lot of fun. And if we're on the right side of some of these late buckets, as opposed to being on the wrong side, you were on the right side of the one in New Mexico, I was on the wrong side of the one in Charlotte. But the bottom line is, be on the right side of some of these, you could have an excellent week. Being on the wrong side, you can still make money. But, boy, there's a lot of potential out there. And let's set up the week ahead right now. Before we come on the air tomorrow, we're already going to have Big East tournament games in action. So we better begin breaking down that tournament right here, right now. Now, Tuesdays and Wednesdays shows are going to focus on best future tickets in some of the other conference tournaments out there. But let's start today with a little Big East breakdown because obviously it's going to tip off before we come back on air. Anyone in the future book worth looking at? Let's take a look at some of the favorites right now in the Big East. This is one of several major conference tournaments that has a single odds-on favorite. 16 teams in the Big East tournament. One of them is laying chalk. That team, Syracuse, at minus 115 at one respected sports book where we have the numbers up right now. Other contenders, Marquette is the number 2. The second favorite in this conference, we've got Notre Dame as a fairly short underdog. Georgetown and Louisville round out the top 5 in the Big East. So anyone from that quintet that you're interested in supporting, Dave, can anyone knock off Syracuse? So the Orange deserve to be literally chalk against 15 other teams.
Okay, we're going to do a lot of discussion on future books this week because it's one of the times we do take the plunge. There's a quick turnaround, so your money's not tied up, but a lot of bad numbers out there. Because again, these are mathematical approximations that if every team brought their A game, this is what it looks like. Well, you know what? Over the course of the week, a lot of teams aren't bringing their A game. Some aren't even bringing their B minus. You have teams that specifically do not want to have to go out there and play 3-3 or 4-4. Big East doesn't necessarily bring us that, though. I like Syracuse in this one. It's the deepest team in the conference. And because Syracuse may only be in one more Big East tournament, we're still not dead certain when that shift to the ACC takes place, most likely still the Big East next year. It will mean something to these kids to win this. Does this mean anything to anybody else near the top in the Big East? I don't think it matters much to Marquette. In fact, because Buzz Williams has a short rotation, I don't think he wants 3-3. I think he'd like 2-2. Just so Gardner, who came back over the weekend, gets a little bit of playing time. I don't think he particularly would want a 3-3. But if there was going to be one of the secondary teams, how about Georgetown with all of those seniors? A team that might consider it a crowning achievement to go out with a bang.
Yeah, Georgetown was actually on my list for sure at the plus 500. My biggest concern about the Hoyas is that they do not get the double bye. So they're going to be forced to play 4 games in 4 days to win this tournament. Not to say that it can't be done. Obviously, UConn last year had to play in the first day of the Big East tournament and won 5 games in 5 days and went on to win the national championship. But that is clearly the exception and not the rule. We don't want to take a look at last year and say, oh, well, the same exact things, the same exact long shots are going to come through again in 2012 the way they did in 2011. No, I wouldn't project that. So Georgetown certainly on my list, but Cincinnati's a team that stands out to me, plus 1,200. And again, Cincy, of the teams with the first round bye and the second round bye. You have Syracuse at minus 125. You have Marquette at plus 250. You have Notre Dame at plus 385. And then here's Cincy at 12-1. Again, you make it to the finals. You can hedge off that bet with a positive expectation. You can even do a little bit of that if you make it to the semifinals, if you're willing to turn your potential profits and just lock in something. But Cincy and Georgetown, 2 teams among the longer shots that I've got my eye on.
And maybe the longest of all that we could put a little bit into, Seton Hall at 30-1. Again, a team that just dissolved against DePaul over the weekend. But I think once that game started to get away, they said, let's let it go. But Seton Hall has shown that on a given night, they can beat any of the teams above them. And think about this, something you never would have projected. In the field, not even listed with individual odds this year, teams like Pitt, Villanova, former Big East powers who will come to play. They will come in there and scrap. They're not good enough to win all the way through. But you're going to see Pittsburgh and Villanova on Tuesday play so much harder than we usually see for these also-ran teams in the opener.
Yeah, I mean, Pitt, they have a pretty good track record in that Big East tournament going back quite a long time. Okay, no emails today because you guys haven't been sending good emails in. Come on, give us some questions we can answer on air. The address, SportsDay at Covers.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Vegas SportsDay. And, of course, you can get involved in the community, Covers.com/posting forum. I know I promised an announcement about the Vegas SportsDay pre-tournament party today. It's going to have to wait until tomorrow, unfortunately. We are still making sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. That announcement will be forthcoming tomorrow. Let's hope. But the bottom line is we will be having a party the Wednesday night before the tournament. If you're in Vegas, make sure you're going to hang out with Dave and I as we break down the first round of March Madness.
Coming up next, we just went through the Big East bracket a bit without saying why Louisville was going to win it. We're going to explain why in the postmortem.
Are you looking for the latest odds, the fastest scores, the most important trends, and the best matchups and stats? Are you looking for the key late-breaking information that can make you a winner? Well, Covers.com has the answer. The world's largest sports betting community gives you a front row seat in the heart of the action, from the opening lines to the final scores. If you want to stay ahead of the game, Covers covers the numbers.
Oh, hello there. My name is Brandon Guchan, host of Awkward Silence 2.1. And when I'm not living vicariously through Chris Phillips, I'm on VegasVideoNetwork.com.
Okay, guys, let's scrub up. It's time for the postmortem. We take you deep inside the game to show you things you should be seeing, but probably aren't.
We've spent a lot of time over the course of the last month extolling the potential virtues of Louisville as a March Madness sleeper. After playing shorthanded through most of non-conference play, the Cardinals were beginning to get healthier, and as always, we look to Rick Pitino in the month of February when he begins putting the pieces together, as well as any coach in the country. We noted that Pitino's February record several times on the show, an outstanding, both straight up and ATS result long term, and it looked like more of the same this season. Louisville came into February and cashed their first 4 bets of the month, a nice little 4-0 ATS run. But since that time, someone hit the dimmer switch on Louisville, quite frankly. The Cardinals are going to head to Madison Square Garden on an 0-5 point spread slide, and instead of the pieces coming together for Rick Pitino and company right now, this is a puzzle that isn't connecting at all right now. When we see a team showing a dramatic change to their long-term pattern, like Louisville did down the stretch in February, it certainly means that it's time to investigate a little bit closer. Time to put them under the scalpel for the postmortem.
The best of Louisville right now is the best of what we usually see from a Rick Pitino team. They guard hard. They play hard. They scrap. So you take a look at the defense. Over the course of the full season, even counting all that injury time, number 5 in the nation in defensive field goal percentage, number 7 in the nation in steals. That usually means cash register time come March. But the last 4 games, they held the opposition under 60 points 4 straight times, didn't cover any of them. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out if you're playing defense that good and you're not winning or covering the spread, where's the problem? It's on offense. 2 out of 23 from three-point range in that clunker against Syracuse on Saturday. And, of course, we come to sort of the same conclusion that Rick Pitino did about why they were so bad in that game. We're going to get to that in a moment, but first, let's focus now on these full-season Louisville offensive numbers. Take a just how far they've fallen. Now, there are 338 teams in Division I. Look at this. 200 in field goal percentage. Eesh. 246 in three-point field goal percentage. 203rd in free throw percentage, and a god-awful 260th in turnovers per game. That's just wretched all the way across the board. What we've noticed, though, from watching the last couple of games, because, again, we wanted Louisville on our radar screen. We wanted to be playing on them. They're running pretty good stuff. They're getting good looks. A couple of weeks ago, we had talked about Pitino matching up against Jim Boeheim's 2-3 zone, and how year in and year out, he had done it better than anyone. They did it again Saturday, but they shoot 2 for 23 from three-point range. So what did Pitino walk away with? His quote on it is, "Our Achilles heel is missing open shots." Yeah, early in the season, you have games where you miss open shots. Figure that'll bounce back. That'll revert. There are pendulums in play. This late in the year, you're running good plays, you're still missing the shots, it means your kids can't shoot. Just can't shoot well enough to be the team they want to be. So our focus on Louisville at March, if there are particular opponents they can beat with the defense, we're there. But if there are opponents where they're going to have to make a shot in order to win the game, you're not going to see us. Of course, making shots makes highlight reels. So do dunks. SportsCenter is all about those great game-changing moments at the end of the game when someone comes up with the big shot. SportsCenter doesn't show people scrambling after loose balls. It's just not sexy. But it's what we want to see. Because when we see a team scrambling after loose balls, that's the type of team we want to be betting on. It means they're trying, they're competing, they want to be able to win, and yet they might be doing it in a way that's not on the radar screen. Hence the New Orleans Hornets, 8-2 against the spread over their last 10 games, including a 6-0 run on a road trip. Now here's the problem at the bottom of the food chain in any sport. Bad teams can have a good spread run without necessarily doing anything right. Doesn't mean that you played well to cover 6 in a row. It means the markets realize just how bad you are, because a lot of times odds makers have to have fire sales on these teams. They keep raising the line to a point at which a team finally covers. Might be a little bit different with the Hornets, though. We can talk about 8-2 over the last 10, but there's another number over those last 10 that might mean even more.
Yeah, no question, Dave. The key here is not the 8-2 point spread run for New Orleans over the last 10 games, but how about the fact that New Orleans won 5 of those games in outright fashion? They were underdogs of 5 points or more in each and every one of those victories, straight up victories, and obviously point spread victories. If you're winning straight up as 5-point dogs, you're cashing your winning bet if you're taking them plus the points. And even when we look at the 5 losses, New Orleans comes up pretty good. They took Indiana to overtime in Indianapolis before coming up short. They lost by 4 at Chicago, a game where the Bulls closed out on an 8-0 run, where New Orleans had a lead at Chicago late in the fourth quarter. So the talent on hand for Monty Williams and company is nothing special. They've been an injury-riddled team all year, and they weren't necessarily the most talented squad in the NBA to begin with. But sometimes that can work in a team's favor. A bunch of mediocre talents with a chance to prove that they belong in the NBA. They've come together, they can play hard, they can develop chemistry. Through adversity, sometimes good things can and do happen, and that was certainly the case on their last road trip. Monty Williams, Hornets head coach, believes more of the same is ahead. Here's Williams' quote: "When we're out on the road, we seem to get tighter. We go out to eat together. All you have is your teammates. It should be a good time for us. I thought the last road trip we had was a bit of a bonding trip, and this one shouldn't be anything but that." Of course, coaches are paid to be upbeat. They're paid to be optimistic. They're paid to shine a nice light on these type of things. So sometimes we like to look to the players to see if those signs about positive attitude are just coach speak or if they're being regurgitated and regenerated from the players on the squad. Maybe this quote from Al-Farouq Aminu tells us even more. Quote, "We have the confidence that we can play with teams, and we know we can close out games. It's just like seeing the ball go in the basket. Seeing a couple of wins, you feel like you should win games. And when that happens, you feel like you can close out games like that, and slowly but surely it starts to happen." Are the betting markets paying attention? No, not really. The recent 6-game road trip, they were plus 10.5 at Oklahoma City, plus 10.5 at Indiana, plus 13.5 at Chicago. Tonight, where are they? Catching double digits once again, but this time at Portland, a team that's 0-3 straight up in ATS since the All-Star break, and just 4-9 straight up in their last 13 ball games. That's what happens. You see point spreads like this because players diving after loose balls just doesn't make many highlight reels, and that allows a team like the Hornets to retain their value moving forward.
Coming up next, we have a rare revenge setting for an A-level team in the NBA, and we're going to tell you whether or not you should be bullish on the concept. You're watching Vegas Sports Day.
Let me know when I'm live. Hi, everybody. This is Bridget Magnus of Getting Real Estate in Vegas, and you are watching the Vegas Video Network.
Livestream is your premier place to watch live events on the web, mobile devices, and connected TVs. See new events daily or broadcast your own at livestream.com. Livestream. Be there.
Okay, guys, it's money time. This edition of Money Time is brought to you by Covers.com. Remember, for all the key information you need in every sport, Covers covers the numbers. Let's start tonight in Chicago, where the Bulls, 7-point home favorites against the Indiana Pacers. And, these two teams, they met in a playoff series last year, and this is going to feel like a playoff atmosphere again tonight. The current number 1 seed versus the current number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. The markets have certainly acknowledged the fact that Chicago, who was injury-riddled throughout the first couple of months of the season, they are getting healthier right now. All the pieces starting to come together for Tom Thibodeau and company. And boy, the Bulls have played some pretty good basketball of late, hence the betting market's respect. But, the Pacers, you can call it a perfect post-break layout, and you probably wouldn't be overstating it. They have the first game back off the All-Star break, then 3 straight practice days. Remember how little practicing has been going on in the NBA this year. 3 straight practice days for Indiana. They get easy routes over the Warriors and the Hornets, in which they allow just 81 points per game on 37% shooting. And boom, they got a little bit of time here prior to the matchup against Chicago. This is a Pacers team that's now up to number 6 in the NBA. These are the best defensive stats, and they're certainly going to bring confidence in this venue. Heck, they won here 95-90 back on January 25th.
Now here's the problem. They might not have necessarily won the right way on this court. It was a play of the day game, of course, for us here, so we were watching a little more closely. Because of the intensity level of that playoff series last spring that got real physical, got real chippy, Pacers were so up for that game. They didn't stop when the game ended. They're on the court doing a little bit of celebrating afterwards. Now, if you do that on Derrick Rose's court and he has to sit and watch you do that, it creates something different for a rematch. Let's take a look at what Rose had to say immediately after that earlier defeat. He says, "I'll never forget how they celebrated after the game. I can't wait to play them again." Okay, now during the course of the regular season, you only get a small handful of games where an A team brings their A game. Their goal is to get to the playoffs. So we sort of space it very carefully. Whenever we do see one of those settings, our tendency is to try to get in play. But now here's the problem. Because the Bulls are playing well, and because the Pacers are off the radar a little bit, is there a value point that allows us to use the concept?
Well, there is a problem here from a value perspective if you do like the Chicago side. The betting public is going to like an A-level team that comes into any particular game with a chip on their shoulder. It certainly makes sense. You're going to get one of the best teams, and you expect to get one of their best efforts. Clearly, there's going to be some support for Chicago tonight based on this revenge motif and the fact that the Bulls are playing some pretty darn good basketball. But let's not forget there are 2 factors that really work in Indiana's favors here. First, of course, the Pacers, they're a confident team on the road. As we talked about, they've already won on this court already this year. They have 12 straight-up wins on the highway this season, including 6 outright upsets as an underdog. And for Indiana, again, we talked about how the schedule set up very, very well for them coming out of the break. This is only their 2nd game in 6 nights. Meanwhile, Derrick Rose, 42 minutes of playing time. Luol Deng, 43 minutes of playing time for Chicago in a tough, tight game just yesterday.
Let's go to the nightcap of our 2-game sequence. Another big showdown between teams that know a lot about each other. Dallas going to Oklahoma City right now, the host Thunder. 6.5-point favorites. This is the 9th meeting between these teams just since the middle of May last year. Again, another playoff return encounter. 7-1 to the underdog in those last 8. 7 consecutive underdog covers. So anytime you see that pattern, and of course you see the way the Mavericks have played in this role, again with Jason Kidd, Dirk Nowitzki on the court, you have your poise on the road in a tough setting. You actually rise the challenge as well. The last 2 years, about 19-8 for the Mavericks as road underdogs, as good as anyone in the NBA. And a couple of those losses were without Nowitzki on the court, actually even better in the games in which he's played. So it's been a dog series. You're getting a lot of points between two teams that don't like each other, but also know each other well, which usually means closer games. But is now there another emerging issue coming into play? When we talk about Chicago playing at their A-level game tonight, do we have to start fearing the Thunder a little bit on nights when they're going to bring their A game?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a fair bit about Oklahoma City on this show, and in particular, we talk about their end game abilities. We've cashed a handful of play of the day tickets supporting the Thunder in these point spread pick'em type ranges where they seem to play their best because their end game execution has been nothing short of outstanding. But there's certainly some swagger for OKC these days. We're seeing the mentality to become an A-level team, and that's showing when it comes to how this Thunder team is performing off a single loss. In the Kendrick Perkins era, let's take a look at the numbers. This is how the Thunder have done off a loss since March 1st of last year, over the last 12 months. 13 losses, not very many. How have they done off those losses? 11-2 straight up, 10-2-1 against the number. This season coming off a loss, 6-1 straight up, 6-1 ATS. Now, not necessarily easy laying points in this matchup tonight because obviously, as we saw in the loss to Atlanta, where Westbrook and Durant, the 1-2 combo for Oklahoma City, those two scored 60 of the 90 points in that loss against the Hawks. And that's the problem, or one of the problems that the Thunder has, an over-reliance on their two primary scorers. But at the same time, even though this number may be a little bit high in that regard, let's not forget there is a matchup edge here for OKC at the point. Jason Kidd had a hard time staying in front of Russell Westbrook last year. We can expect he'll have a hard time staying in front of Westbrook again tonight.
Up next, we got championships on the line in the Colonial and in the Western Athletic Conference. 4 NCAA tournament teams to talk about. You're watching Vegas Sports Day.
Traditional media believes that after about 3 minutes, you'll tune out. Most Vegas media companies think if it doesn't jiggle, you won't tune in. At the Vegas Video Network, we think both are wrong. The Vegas Video Network is the first and only live online broadcast network that specializes in insider news and expert views about Vegas. We combine great storytelling with the ability to watch when and where you want on your computer, mobile device, or television. Discover the real Las Vegas. Visit VegasVideoNetwork.com.
College edition, let's take a look at a couple of TV conference championships for tonight. And we'll start in the Colonial Athletic Conference. The championship game tonight in Richmond, Virginia. Drexel versus VCU. VCU, the Rams, 2.5-point favorites in that ball game. And again, this is a good chance, even if you have no action on this game, a good chance to sit down and watch a couple of teams that don't get a lot of TV time because, frankly, I don't think this is a win in your in setting. Both of these teams should be getting March Madness invites, regardless of who wins or loses this ball game. So tonight gives you an opportunity to watch both squads play and then project forward for whatever their first and subsequent round matchups are going to be. You're going to see visuals like the one that we showed early in the show about Jarrett Jack diving on the floor for a loose ball many times because there are few teams in the country that play harder than these two. Bruiser Flint, Shaka Smart definitely have their intense personalities reflected on the court. Now, what have we seen when these two teams face in the regular season? Well, 80 regular season minutes. Drexel wins by a total of 124 to 120. So the two meetings decided by a net of 4 points. What happened last year? What do we got? We got 62 to 60. VCU wins here in the semifinals. Drexel wins 64 to 60 at home. VCU wins 52 to 48 at home. So what does that tell us? Now it's 5 games these two teams have played already over the last 2 years. All 5 of those games came right down to the final minute. All 5, the straight up and point spread winners were in doubt until the final minute of play. But we've also got a kind of unique circumstance for this game that they didn't have in any of the previous 5 games. That, of course, being the 3 games in 3-night sequence that both Drexel and VCU are up against tonight.
Yeah, when you look at those previous meetings and the fact that it's going to be a scrappy game without a lot of points, the 2.5 is supposed to look big. Couple of issues. One, this is going to look like a VCU home game. They're from Richmond. This is right down the street, for their fans. It's not their true home court, but it's a court they play at a lot. And number 2, because some of these teams have to move their tournament game to Monday night for television, it's tough for the visiting fans. Drexel's all the way up in Philadelphia. If a Drexel fan wants to stay through the championship game, you miss work Monday, maybe miss work part of the day Tuesday or all day Tuesday as well. So home game there, but also talk about what the 3-in-3 is going to mean in terms of tonight, because one team is a lot deeper than the other. Let's take a look at the starters' impact in minutes played and also in the points scored so far in this Colonial bracket. Starters' minutes, a staggering gap in the tournament. Drexel starters have played 356 minutes out of a possible 400. Virginia Commonwealth, only 264. Bench points through the first 2 rounds of the tournament, 64-7 in favor of VCU. If anything, we have a little bit of a question for Bruiser Flint. They controlled Old Dominion most of the way yesterday. They won the game by 17 points. Yet look at the numbers. Chris Falk played the whole 40. Franz Massenot played 39. Damian Lee, he played 38. You might have had a chance to get those kids off the court a little bit earlier, knowing who your opponent was most likely to be. Could Flint possibly have given away an edge yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, this is tournament time. So be prepared to watch this game with a tournament mentality. That means you want to watch that early flow very closely to see if any edges present themselves in the second half when it comes to side and or total. Then again, I mean, you might favor the Rams either way in this instance. Dave just talked about some of the depth concerns that Drexel faces. Those are very, very real. And VCU, they're going to have the fresh legs in comparison to Drexel. They have the pressing tactics that can take advantage of another team's tired legs, and it also allows them to chase well from behind. And VCU can protect the lead because Drexel likely to have a tough time chasing. So the lean here is towards VCU. May wait until halftime before I get involved.
Let's go down the street to the Orleans Arena. Great showdown tonight for the WAC championship. St. Mary's against Gonzaga. Gonzaga about a 2.5-point favorite right now. Had almost 8,000 people at the arena on Saturday. Nice event for our local community, with BYU now being in the tournament, which will impact this a couple of different ways. Get to that in a moment. First, you talk about experience in a championship game. About 15 straight years for Gonzaga. That is quite an achievement. No one else in college basketball can match that. In a league that actually plays pretty good basketball. This will be the 4th straight year that these two have gone head-to-head. So you look at the full season power ratings, pretty close. You look at the standings, pretty close. Each team gets an easy home win. But as the season unfolded, maybe there's a little gap between these teams we see come championship time. Could it be all about defense? Well, let's take a look at the defensive numbers for these two teams. What we're going to focus on is just how they've done in conference play. That way it's against the exact same schedule. Look at the edges all to Gonzaga. 3 fewer points per game allowed. More than 4.5 percentage points better in field goal shooting defense. And look at the gap in 3-point defense. That is a significant one. Gonzaga also with 10 more block shots. So, yeah, when we look at the defensive part of the equation, it does favor Gonzaga here. But now here's something a little bit different. Comparing this to most conference tournament finals, there are some factors in play that actually help the offenses a little.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of time when we look to determine who's going to win the finals of some of these knockdown, drag-out tournaments, we look at a team whose defense is going to have an edge over their opponent's offense. But this setting may be a little bit different. We're likely to see better shooting than we have in most of these conference tournaments. Instead of back-to-back, guess what? The players are fresh here this year. Why? Well, the newest entrant in this conference, in the West Coast Conference for basketball, is BYU. And BYU does not play on Sundays. So the tournament format was changed. The early rounds were moved up a day, and teams got Sunday off. So that means, number one, an extra practice day at the Orleans. And number two, fresher legs. And let's not forget, both Gonzaga and St. Mary shot better than 50% on these rims. Pretty soft rims at the Orleans right now in both their Saturday wins. Here's the quote from Randy Bennett. Quote, "I think it's going to make for a better game. Both teams got some rest and have a little bit more time to prepare. So thanks, BYU."
That was nice of him.
Yeah, I thought it was a very nice quote. Exactly. Neither team's going to have to play before next Thursday at the earliest. It also could mean a lot of late scrambling if this game is close late. Both teams solid at the free throw line, so maybe you look to put a little bit of over in your pockets for this one. But, Dave, I think we have a better choice for the play of the day for this evening.
Yeah, you'll be able to sit and watch that one and enjoy it. You probably don't want to watch this one, or you aren't planning to. But let's go back to that postmortem and talk about New Orleans a little bit. Our focus will shift here. It'll be anti-Portland. Give us 10.5 with the Hornets. Yeah, play of the day material. We told you what they're doing right. The list of what Portland's doing right would be a short one. As Teddy mentioned, 0-3 straight up and against the spread since the All-Star break. 4-9 in their last 13 games. 2-6 the last 8 home games. And keep in mind, in that 4-13, in that 2-6, was that giveaway by the Spurs when Greg Popovich kept Tim Duncan and Tony Parker out. Means they're playing even worse than those numbers show. Uphill battle for Portland just to win the game, much less win the game in double figures.
The New Orleans Hornets plus the 10.5. That's the Vegas Sports Day play of the day. And that's going to wrap it up for the Monday edition. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us. For Malinsky, I'm Savransky. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll see you again tomorrow.